welcome to the Microsoft Middle East and Africa Forum for Sustainability Leaders, a podcast series that covers all of the subjects related to sustainability, from the circular economy to green technology, from climate finance to energy transition, as we strive to facilitate knowledge exchange with critical voices tasked with leading the region's drive toward net zero. Today, we're looking at the theme of energy transition and the hydrogen economy. With the region simultaneously pursuing various initiatives to advance the green transition, the energy transition, we'll gain insights into the direction of the hydrogen economy in the region and how players are incorporating it into broader national goals. I'm happy to welcome today's guest and hear his insights and perspectives. We have with us today Roland Kepner, Executive Director of Hydrogen and Green Fuels within the energy sector at Neom in Saudi Arabia. Roland leads all hydrogen and clean fuel initiatives and activities supporting Neom in its ambition to be the first at-scale region to be 100% powered by renewable and sustainable energy. I'm also happy to welcome our host, Zainab Al-Amin, Vice President of Digital Transformation at Microsoft. Zainab, thank you as well for joining us today, and I welcome your opening thoughts on the theme of today's discussion.
Thank you, Thomas, and thank you, Ronald, for joining us for this podcast. Sustainability is top of mind for everyone, and especially this region. We had COP27 in Sharm el-Sheikh last year, and it's expected to be in Dubai this November. So there is a lot of focus on sustainability in the region, and in Saudi Arabia specifically, with Neom, the most sustainable urban complex with all of the mega projects that is happening. And to capitalize on that, Microsoft have announced our Istidama board. Istidama is the Arabic word for sustainability, which is a collaboration, an advisory board between Microsoft, CACS, King Abdulaziz for Science and Technology, and RIDIA, Research, Development and Innovation entity, the newly established entity with thought leadership members. That includes Neom. It's always exciting to have Neom with us. I'm just walking out of an event with Neom Health, and I'm happy. Today is a lucky day for me that I meet a lot of people from Neom. I'm looking forward for this interesting discussion to cover green fuel and hydrogen and all of the renewable energy, which is direction of Saudi Arabia to in order to reduce the carbon footprint and reach carbon neutrality by 2060. So welcome, Ronald, and I'll give it back to you, Thomas. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Zainab. And Roland, I'd like to start off by asking if you could walk us through ENOWA's history. What was the process like for establishing its ambitions of circular design and clean power, and then partnering with Neom, arguably the world's most ambitious project?
Yes, thank you, Zainab, and thank you, Thomas. It's a great pleasure to be with you today. To answer your first question, I mean, what is ENOWA? ENOWA is the energy and water company of Neom. The roots and history of ENOWA are very closely linked to Neom, of course. And before ENOWA was created as a subsidy of Neom, we've been always part of the story of Neom from day one. So we've been there from the very beginning, and only last year we have created that company. And with this, we've been part of creating the compelling vision and ambition of Neom to become the world's first economy, as you said, to be powered 100% by renewable energy. So, and we as ENOWA, we're going to be the engine room for Neom, and we're going to realize that disruptive ambition. So ENOWA is more than electric power. And I'm coming to the point where you asked about circularity. So we will also provide Neom with water. The water will be produced, obviously, from seawater, but we'll use renewable energy to do that. And the remaining salt concentrate will not be dumped back into the sea and create harm to our pristine maritime environment, because that's the process which is normally happening. So instead, we will use its ingredients to make useful things with it. That has never been done before at that large scale. So we call that zero liquid discharge. And The next logical step in our circular approach is to take energy and water and make green hydrogen. So this hydrogen will be used both for applications in Neom around energy, mobility, making green steel, making green fuels, making Neom a carbon-free environment, but also for large-scale export of energy from Neom into the world. And this is our vision for true circularity, and this is what really drives us to create a step change the way we make and we use energy and water.
And as sustainability remains front and center in the minds of players, not only in the region, but all over the world, and we increasingly start to hear more about terms like green hydrogen, circularity, green steel, I was wondering if you could tell us or talk about any emerging trends in the hydrogen space and in the circular economy space to watch out for in 2023 at the global level, but especially here in the region as well.
Talking about trends, the idea to make green hydrogen a key driver for what I would call the second wave of energy transition is no longer a trend. So it has become a fact. And if you look around the world, many economies and governments have understood that a fair amount of climate change contributors cannot be decarbonized by simply electrifying them. So take for example, steel or fertilizer, as mentioned before. So what, in my opinion, we hopefully see in 2023 is a clean hydrogen economy growing out of its infancy and started to become a real economy. So it will still depend on parenting subsidies to get it started, but with a clear projection, in my view, to become a market-driven economy. So we've seen a tremendous amount of technology demonstrations in the last 10 years, followed by a vast amount of large project announcements in the past 3 years around the globe. But if you look closely at them, almost all of them have not yet reached financial investment decision because market mechanisms around green hydrogen and clean hydrogen are not yet in place to secure these investments. So when you're not having 100% clear market mechanisms, you can either wait or you start creating them for yourself. We in Neom have reached financial investment decision, for example, end of last year, and we are expecting financial close in the next couple of weeks for our amazing green hydrogen project. You may have heard about it. It's a joint venture between Air Products and Aqua Power, and we have already started the construction of the world's largest and first green hydrogen and green ammonia plant at scale. It is 200 times larger than anything comparable which has been built before. It's a multi-billion-dollar investment, and we will produce over 650 tons of green hydrogen per day, and will start the commercial operation in the beginning of 2026. So just as an example on market mechanism, what I also expect in 2023 to happen is some step changes when it comes both to regulations, subsidy mechanisms, and technology scale up. The key technologies around green hydrogen are mature, but they're certainly not at the end of their cost reduction potentials. Yeah, they need to walk the same way as we have seen that with solar and with wind energy, but it's going to happen, and I expect that to start in 2023. So all in all, I have really personally, and I'm 15 years into that business now, I've given up the idea of any becoming the game changer around green hydrogen. I think it's more about a logical and ambitious but adamant continuity to drive that, with a clear focus of making the hydrogen economy probably one of the largest growth opportunities in the year to come. And not only 2023, but all the further years will prove that.
Well, it's certainly very ambitious to undertake a project that will be 200 times the size of any of its predecessors. And within this context, as we see innovations, as we see the scaling of technologies without necessarily the market mechanisms behind it, as you've mentioned, entities across the board are looking to implement sustainability strategies and have various approaches at their disposal. Entities have, on the one hand, they can focus on developing a roadmap, on establishing pipeline transport projects, on raising funds, on establishing these market mechanisms, on scaling technologies, and the list goes on. And I'm wondering what advice you would give a regional organization that's looking to internalize sustainability for the first time.
In simple words, walk the talk. So the toolbox to internalize sustainability in any organization or entity, it's pretty large and broad, as you mentioned. So is its impact. So in the end, it's a question about what your motivation and your ambition is, your economical capabilities to be a front runner, and your appetite to become a first mover and be disruptive. So I have the feeling that many have still not understood two major facts around clean or green hydrogen. One, stopping climate change, reversing it, and I'm not even talking about true sustainability for reversing the climate damage we've done, is a must and not an option. So, and that will not come for free. So the profits which have been created throughout the last decades on the back of climate health will, in my opinion, have to be taken to finance the transition. So it will impact your business in whatsoever way. So you pay more for your electricity, you will be burdened with carbon tax, some of your products and businesses will simply disappear from the market. And we're already seeing that, look at Europe. So two, the whole transition is not only going to save lives and lives on the planet, but it's also to generate wealth and prosperity. So I see the whole discussion about clean hydrogen, about new economies which will rise, countries which have not been blessed with fossil energy in the past, all of a sudden will be energy producers, based on renewable energies. So there will be a shift of power, in my view, on economies when it comes to energy generation. In addition, you will see completely new products, technologies, you will see applications which will create a huge economic growth potential. And that revolution has started with solar and wind-based energy technologies, what I call the first wave of energy transition. But it will continue with what we see around electrolyzers, hydrogen pipelines, fuel cells, and the whole industry is attached to it. So the energy transition will also lead to a material transition. So what I'm saying, you want to internalize sustainability, you need to start believing it will become your future.
And within this energy transition at large, for some organizations or some sectors, it might be easier than for others, and in particularly for energy companies that operate under the fossil fuels model, but are nevertheless looking to diversify their product portfolio to include hydrogen. The challenges sometimes can appear particularly daunting, and I'm wondering if any steps come to mind for you that fossil fuel companies can leverage to set the foundation for becoming potentially hydrogen exporters.
I wouldn't really see the challenges as daunting. I think it's more the painful experience of how slow economies and governments are in reacting these days to address and facilitate change. We're all aware of what's happening outside, but looking really back at the last 15 years, the pace of how fast things have been evolved in fostering change has been really slow. So take hydrogen. It has been around since the first oil was refined, the first chemicals were produced. So today we have around 120 million tons of hydrogen per year, which are produced using fossil sources, mainly natural gas. And they're leaving a carbon trail of 1,000 million tons of CO2. So this hydrogen finally ends up in our fuels, in our fertilizers, in petrochemical and chemical end products. Just take polyurethane foams, just to name a few. So hydrogen is already there. And there's no technical reason to not replace this fossil hydrogen by green or blue hydrogen. And the challenges are really purely economic. So existing supply chains, existing capital investments, and by far lower cost of fossil-based hydrogen, that's the challenge. But we painfully see at the moment in Europe how brittle the system can be, with natural gas prices soaring since a year. So also the economic balance is shifting at the moment, which is really helping to introduce this second wave of energy transition. So to come back to your question, fossil fuel companies, as you described them, I think they should first internalize the concept of clean hydrogen and simply replace the fossil supply chains of the hydrogen they're using today. That's the most easy thing to do. And that would have an immediate impact on climate change at a scale which is much, much larger than any other pharmaceutical or rather complex initiatives around decarbonization, which we're seeing these days. So it would also enable them to create decarbonized products where green or clean hydrogen is embedded. And I'm absolutely positive that our society has to and will be able to absorb any additional costs for these products, as long as we all want to not give up our existing living standards. So we tend to underestimate the ability of people to really pay a contribution of climate change. That will also enable them to operate these new value chains and the related technologies, and it will, in my opinion, finally bring them into pole position for hydrogen exports, because this, as you call them, fossil companies, they own the infrastructures, they know the business. So they should be in the pole position to drive change.
Thank you. And as we near the end of the podcast, I wanted to ask you one final question, and then I'll hand it over to Zainab for her closing remarks as well. But shifting a little bit away from the elements of innovation, of scaling, and focusing a little bit more on the business model, because different regions have different approaches to energy right now. You mentioned Europe's energy troubles. I'm wondering if you think that the business model for hydrogen is different in the Middle East compared to other regions around the world, and if there are different considerations that the region has to take into account, or if the business model is more of a standardized approach regardless of geography.
Is the business model different in the Middle East? I bet it is. So take fossil-based hydrogen, and let me call it from today prehistoric. It's produced primarily in locations where natural gas is available and it's extremely cheap. Just have a look where the world's fertilizer plants or refineries are located. And just to give you an example, and that's partly acknowledged, so last week, a large chemical company in Germany, BASF, they have announced last week to shut down some of their operations in Germany because of the massive increases of natural gas prices. So you look at blue hydrogen, which is also very important for the region. It still requires natural gas, but in order to make it clean, you need to have some solutions to dispose or store the CO2 you create during the process, be it in underground cavities or depleted oil fields. Now, when it comes to green hydrogen, that does not need any natural gas. So it needs renewable electricity, it needs water, and the real cost driver is electricity. So wherever you have access to cheapest renewable energy, makes you sit in the front row when it comes to a good business model, as you mentioned it. So in that way, the Middle East is blessed with both. So on one hand, the opportunity to dispose CO2 and produce blue hydrogen using the oil fields, but also, and more important, as we believe, is access to abundant, cheap, renewable electricity. The challenge of having deserts all of a sudden becomes a blessing and a competitive advantage. If you look at the sun and the wind profiles we're having here in Saudi Arabia, or in particular in Neom, it is giving you really a huge benefit, and that will create a business model which is by far more attractive than in other locations. So, but I'm not saying that the Middle East or Neom is the only place to become a successful producer of clean hydrogen and green hydrogen in particular. There's others around the world, and in particular when it comes to sun and wind power. But together with our geographical location at major trade crossroads, the Middle East, and of course, Neom is a prime location.
Absolutely. So definitely a few comparative advantages there for the region to capitalize on. And as we run up on time, Zainab, I'll kick it off to you for your closing remarks.
Thank you, Ronald, and thank you, Thomas, for this very interesting discussion and highlighting the importance of and what is happening at Neom. I was especially struck by the major investment that you mentioned regarding aqua power and how Neom keeps impressing us with pushing the limits of partnering with aqua power to create the largest investment in green hydrogen, which is twice the size of any one existing today. Also, you highlighted how Middle East is blessed with its location, and although desert might not be used to be viewed as an advantage, now it's because of the availability of the sun and wind. All of that shows, a huge potential for this region to be leading in green energy. And I specifically like when you mentioned that energy transition will not only be, it's something that we need to go through for climate change and to create a world that we can survive and thrive in, but also it's important to generate wealth and prosperity for the planet, and that there will be a shift in power in the countries that adopt renewable energy versus the traditional fuel that is currently happening. So I truly enjoyed the conversation. Thank you so much for sharing what you're doing, and thank you, Thomas.
Thank you. Well, we'll have to wrap it up there, but thank you both for joining us today. Our time together has come to an end. We've had an interesting discussion around the topic of hydrogen power and how it's going hand in hand with building a more sustainable future. For those listening, feel free to follow Gulf Intelligence and the Microsoft Middle East and Africa Forum for Sustainability Leaders for more insights as the podcast series progresses. Thank you very much, Roland and Zainab, for joining us today. We appreciate your time and insights, and we look forward to welcoming you again in the future.
Thank you.